welcome to Your Soul Wisdom, hosted by Yiannah Ahmohr Manokas. In each episode, we invite you on a transformative journey delving into the profound mysteries and wisdom of the soul. Join us as we explore a wide array of spiritual topics and sacred practices that nurture and heal the soul, from reincarnation and soul contracts to the enigmatic experiences of womb alchemy and astral travel. Our discussions are designed to enlighten, inspire, and deepen your understanding of your own soul's journey. With Your Soul Wisdom, nothing is off limits.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Your Soul Wisdom, our weekly podcast. I'm Rachel and I'm thrilled to welcome our host, Yiannah Ahmohr Manokas. I met Yiannah last year and it was love at first sight, and I believe for the moment I have captured her as my spiritual wife. She's the cause and constant drive of the podcast. We all do nothing else but turn up, and she does absolutely everything else, and we want everyone to know it.
Yeah.
Yiannah is a passionate goddess, a lover of all things that uplift and inspire, a true powerhouse, radiating energy, drawing people in and embodying the qualities of creator who genuinely wants the best for everyone she encounters. She is relentless in her pursuit of truth and wisdom, but also tender, loving, and attentive to all of those in her fields, making us each feel fuck. Okay. Sorry, Yiannah. Oh, God, fuck. This is so hard.
I love it. You were doing really good. You were doing really good.
Keep going. Keep going.
She's relentless in her pursuit of wisdom and truth, but also tender, loving, and attentive to all of those in her fields, making us each feel heard, seen, and valued. Get ready to be enlightened and elevated as we find out some of what has caused her to be here and now with us in this moment. This episode is all about Yiannah. Yiannah, how do you want to play this? Are we going to start in Greece?
Okay, first of all, that was so beautiful. Like,
I can't believe you do that every week. That kills. Oh my gosh, Yiannah, you're amazing. I'm just more excited to how amazing you are.
I will say it is really hard to sit here. We've done an episode so far, everybody except Rachel. Oh, just wait, Rachel. Because it is really hard to sit here and take that all in.
Oh, Yiannah, I could have gone on forever. Honestly, it could have been pages long. It could have been forever. I didn't even talk about the fact that you do healing. That you're a mother.
I think
or anything.
I think I need that for my new about me section of my website. Like, that's what it needs to be.
Okay.
Rachel just introduced you as a spiritual lover, right?
A wife.
I love it.
And believe me, I'm open to polygamy, but I do want priority.
I think the proper term, Amanda, was spiritual wife.
Spiritual wife, okay.
We're married. It's official.
We're moving
anyway. But no joke, are we going to start in Greece? Because I honestly think that you are a Greek woman. So, and Greece is where you're from, and Greece is where we're all going. So Greece is the word.
Okay. Oh, wow. I like that. Should we start singing? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Love that film.
Born in the States, born in Chicago. Raising, I mean, literally, here, I'm going to run it down really quickly. Born in Chicago. By the time I was just past 1 year old, I had fallen down a flight of stairs. I had fallen out of a moving car. And then just after that incident, my dad, we moved to Greece. And it was the most magical, I don't even know how to explain it. It was the most magical childhood, because imagine you're in this village, and some people would consider a big village. It's like 2,000 people now. So maybe let's say 1,000, 1,500 back then. And I was only there from 1.5 to 7 years old. And imagine that all day long, you wake up, you leave the house, and you're playing with your siblings in the middle of a mountain, and you're jumping off cliffs, and your parents don't know where you are. but every single person in that village knows every kid, every parent, everything. And so it's like you've got parents everywhere, but it's safe. There's no worries. Although I will say, I do remember one time in the village square, which like on the weekends, it was like there was always celebrations. And my father owned like the main taverna, which is tavern in the town square. And I remember going in between one of the cafe, like there was two cafes. Somehow I ended up in this little alleyway. It was darker and there was this huge celebration going on. And somebody totally whipped it out in front of me. And I don't know who it was. Oh yeah. I remember being like, I remember it happening. And I remember being like, no. And I ran back. And I don't think I told anybody. I know this is like, why am I even sharing this? Who knows? Because I just can't keep things in. But aside from that incident, it was a childhood that I wish I could give my daughter now. But obviously, when my parents got divorced when I was 7, and my mom shares a story that because my parents were arranged, my mom shares a story that they weren't in love with each other, but they had to be together. And when we moved to Greece, all of my mom's immediate family was in the States. And she was like, I wanted to get out of here. The marriage was not a happy marriage. You know, they were together because they had to be together. And at one point, my dad knew that my mom wanted to come back to the States. And so every year she'd come visit, he would only allow her to bring 2 out of 3 of us, knowing that no way is my mom going to leave a kid behind. So she would always have to come back. And then I don't remember this, but I know I've always been a mama's girl. Her and I, we just have a special bond. Well, at some point, she did try to leave. And the way my grandmother, who had set it up, was just come here and we're going to figure out all the paperwork. We're going to get all the kids over, like this whole thing. Okay. And my mom left for about a month and a half. And my mom shares that she cried every day because she's like, I could not be without you guys, but I knew I needed to be out of the marriage. And I couldn't be out of the marriage in Greece. I had no support. And so she kept going to court and like going like higher and higher levels to figure out what can I do. And long story short, eventually they said to her, there's nothing you can do. The best thing you can hope for is go back and hope that your husband takes you back so you could be with your kids. There's nothing, because you're talking about 2 different countries. And she came back and she says to me, when you saw when I saw her, she goes, not only did you completely lose your mind and have a breakdown, but she goes, for the next couple of years, she goes, you wouldn't let go of me. And I think of that because my mother, the connection that her and I have now, she's my only spiritual person in my family. Everyone else thinks that her and I are like delusional and crazy and all that stuff. And to have her, she's the one that brought me to this space, because in the house there was angels everywhere, and she had like all the books about, angel spirituality. And there was this book called the Book of James, and it was like very simple. And does anybody know the Book of James? No. Okay. It was this woman who sat down on her typewriter one day, and this spirit came through her and started sharing about all these things, what happens in the afterlife and what happens when spirits are like in the in-between and all this stuff. And I remember being like 10, 11 years old, and she's like telling me about this, and we would read together. And so she was that person that really connected me to the other side. It was within me. But aside from that, I never had anybody. Nobody talks about this stuff. Even now, I'm just finding this tribe and this community where they're like, I can talk about this all day long. Let's figure it out. I didn't have that as a kid. And although I come from a big family, I've always felt alone. I can't explain it. It's like I would just sit we had this really awesome basement. It was like the kids area. And I would sit there And I would make the same puzzle over and over and over. And at some point, you'd lose pieces here and there. But for me, it was like my space, because even though surrounded by people, I never really felt connected. And I have a beautiful, large, huge Greek family. So when you think of like my big fat Greek wedding, aside from the Windex, that is all active. Okay. But I just always did like my own thing. I was always different than everybody. I had friends, I had people in my life, but never that true connection on a deeper level, if that makes sense. And so it's been a very lonely journey getting to this space, and sometimes very discouraging, because when everyone else is very 3D and you're like optimistic and spiritual and you're saying these things and they're like, their life is falling apart, and you're like, no, it's okay. Listen, it's going to get better and be optimistic. They're like, shut up. I don't want to hear it. And so it could be very easy to just shut it down. And, I kind of sit in my uniqueness or my individuality. I like Amanda, or Amanda's like, I don't give a shit what you think of me. Same, girlfriend. I feel that to my core, because I really don't care. Do you know how many times I've done stuff and people are like, how are you going to pull that off? Aren't you worried? What's going on? And how are you going to be successful? And I thought to myself, man, if I really let people's perceptions and beliefs even like trickle in a little bit, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know how I got on this tangent.
No, it's not.
So I have a question.
And it's
I have
questions.
I do have a question though, because Yiannah, you left me hanging a little bit anyway, with how your mum actually managed to get you guys over to
yes.
Okay. Sorry. I'm still there. I'm paying attention, but I'm like, but what happened?
Here's what I want to say. I want to say that I've only ever known my one grandma, which is my mom's mom. She grew up, she was born in 1932. She went through the Depression. I mean, they fought, 8 or 11 kids, fighting over a loaf of bread. Okay. And so she grew up, she had to be tough and strong. Like whatever life hands you, you don't break, you go. And so when that was going with my mom and they weren't finding resolution, and my grandmother knew that my mom was very unhappy in the States, my grandmother kept saying to her, listen, I know it's terrible, but my mom had me at 21. So at this point, she was like 26 years old, something like that. My grandmother says, you're still young. You can get remarried and have more kids to fill that void. And I know that sounds really fucked up, but her mentality was, how can I put the Band-Aid on this situation? Yeah. And so my mother had her own breakdown, and she's just like, I can't do that. She comes back. And for 2 years, they were trying to figure out, it's not that my mom was like, get out of here, husband, I don't want to be with you. My mom was like, I will still be with you. Let's just all go back to the States. Greece was just not her thing. And my dad's like, well, America is not my thing. Okay, so that was not going to change. And so my mother, my mom, my aunt, and my mom, my grandma, and my aunt, they were trying to figure stuff out. And eventually, my grandmother calls and says, your father is not doing well. He's really sick, and you need to come see him before he dies. Now, the irony of this whole thing is that, so my mom gets that news, and now the family plan is that within the next month or two, we're going to go and say goodbye, if you will, to my grandfather. And in preparation of that, I think it was only weeks later, my grandfather actually, in the middle of the night, he rolled off the bed. He hit his head, if I'm remembering correctly. Long story short, he goes to the hospital, and he had a tumor, so then it was this whole, like, he was put under life support, like this whole thing. So he actually was dying. And so my grandmother calls and she says, you need to come now. And so I had my mom's version forever, which was, then we got on the plane, we came to the States, and I told your dad we're not coming back. You can come here and we could be a family. I recently had this conversation with my father because he came to Chicago for the first time in 40 years, 40 years since we had left. And I said to him, zero judgment. Like, I just want to know, like, what was that like for you? He said to me, he goes, obviously, I believed what was happening with your grandfather. Obviously, you know, he was in the hospital dying, and I knew you guys needed to go, but I also knew you weren't going to come back. And children at the age that you three were at, children need their mother. Children can live without their father. They can't live without the mother. So he said, I had to let you go. And so that's really, yeah, it's
Wow.
now for me, because I was always so attached to my mom, I didn't feel, and I was only 7, which is old, like as far as like a child, you know, you're understanding what's happening. But I was so attached to her that I never really felt the distance of my dad. Where my brother and my sister, who were a few years older, it was really tough for them.
Yeah.
And so I hate to say it this way, but I feel blessed that I didn't, or at least I don't remember going through that torment of missing a parent. Because I think of like my daughter now, and I'm like, she would be devastated at 3 years old if her dad or her mom was gone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's how that happened. Yeah. I know.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? And I sit here and I go, I've had a totally normal life.
Hey, so Yiannah,
Wow.
like you're always interested in spirit, but then what was your gateway drug? Like, was it books? Was it horoscopes? Was it what actually started? And how old were you when you actually really started identifying as somebody who was interested in spirit?
You know, I've always identified, even though I didn't practice, and even as a teenager, you know, you're not involved in anything back then. But I've always, that part of me was always very real, very huge, and like very present. And then I think I was 25, and my mother says to me one day, she goes, oh, I had this call with this medium in Wisconsin. Okay. And she goes, you should call her and see what she says. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, give me the information. I'll do it immediately, because that's just like, so that to me was the first time that I had like a real, you know, spiritual service or interaction in that way. And it was really cool. And she actually, she says to me, your life, she goes, is set up in these 14-year cycles, which is interesting, right? Because in our work, we talk about these 7-year cycles.
7 years.
And so she says to me, she broke them all down. And then she goes from 20, I'll never forget it, from 20 to 42, it's going to be, and I'm about to be 42. She goes, it's going to be about, you know, your family and, you know, obviously your work and stuff like that. But she goes, that next cycle from 43 to whatever that is, 43 to 57.
52,
is that correct? Yeah, whatever. She goes, you're going to go from like this to this, like your work will be the primary focus, but it's going to shift in such a way that you won't even be able to recognize or understand like the magnitude of it. And then I remember being like, look, my whole life, you guys, I think I've made this abundantly clear. I'm a lover. I'm a romantic. I went to college because you go to college. My entire life, since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a wife and I wanted to be a mother. And those were my aspirations. It meant that much to me. And so there was no plan for work. Everything I did just fell into my lap. And I did well with it and that kind of thing. But it's one of those where I just didn't know that it was my direction until it became my direction. And so here I am with this woman. She's saying this to me. And all I can think is, no, because I'm just going to like be a mom, and that's I'm going to support my husband and his work, and that's it. So then shortly after that, maybe in that same year, I was creative director of a trade show company, and we were in the office, and one of the sales girls, she goes, oh my God, she's like, really random. We had never spoken about spirituality. And she goes, hey, one of my girlfriends just had a reading by this woman named Patty, and it was absolutely insane. So I'm like, okay, great. I'll go see her. And at that point, here I am, like, I'm in a job that I love. I'm in a relationship, like everything in my mind, I knew what my life was going to be. And I sit down across this woman, and she goes to me, you're not going to marry the guy. You're going to buy your own home. You're going to go back to school. You're going to do all these things. And I remember I left there pissed. I was like, no, that's not, you're wrong. Why would I buy my own home when me and my partner are going to have a home together? Why would I go back to school? Was this whole thing. And I took those notes and I shoved them away somewhere. And literally within a few years, when I was not with the guy and I had gone back to school, I was unboxing things from my new home that I had bought on my own. And as I'm putting, I'm taking things from, I'm unboxing things, and I come across those notes. And I was like, everything she had said to me had already transpired, much against my will. I never would have planned it or went through it. And so I had, over the years, every other year I'd go see her. And at one point she says to me, Yiannah, she goes, we do these galas where it's like a whole night, very much like your sister Amanda, right? Where it's like a whole night and there's all these people in the crowd and mediums go up there and they take their turn, deliver messages.
Yeah, like platform.
Yeah, platform.
Yeah. And so it was at this little spiritual church. And when I say little, I mean, it's like this little chapel. It's tiny. And I remember when I went in there, I was like, this is the best thing ever, like spirit all night long. Like I started going to every single one of them. It was like 3 or 4 times a year. And then when I was about 28 years old, I went through a 28 years old? No, about 30 years old or something. I went through a terrible breakup to where it completely crumbled me. And all I could think was, I kept hearing her voice in my head say to me, come to the church service. So like twice a month, they would do these healing services. And at the end of the night, they would do like 45 minutes of messages. So I was like, great, I get like a healing service and the possibility of a message. Like, this is fantastic. Long story short, I started going from then. I think so now at this point, it's like, I don't know, over 10 years ago. Maybe I've missed a handful of healings, church nights or whatever you want to call it. Through her, because we became really close friends and I love her and adore her, and she's my first spiritual teacher. She really got me to open up my mind, and I was able to find my first community of spiritually minded people that you can talk about this stuff with and they don't think you're crazy. And so I'm going to wrap it up to where she was starting to teach clairvoyant classes. And I was like, oh my God, thank God, mediumship classes are here. I could finally do this with her. I've been waiting and asking for years. And then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
So that everything was put on pause, which now I suppose she could have just done on Zoom, but she's not tech savvy, okay? But what happened was everything went on pause. And just like many people, although I was spiritually awakened by the time COVID came around, it took me from like this much conscious availability, if you will, and it exploded me. And all of a sudden I was introduced and learning and experiencing way more things than I ever had. And my family absolutely thought I was going crazy. I remember like experiencing and learning information where I was like, if I tell, because I was married at the time, if I tell my husband or my mom, even my mom who understands, they will certify me. And literally my husband was like, I think you need to like slow down and like calm down because you're saying really crazy stuff. And I'm like, I know it sounds crazy, but like it feels so right to me. Long story short, everybody finally came on board, which I'm really happy about. But it really led me into, because I had a daycare business at that time, right? Going back to like the whole family life, I was like, what can I do that when I have kids, my children can be with me all the time and I don't need a babysitter or my mother or whatever. And so I had started a daycare business, and then I had my daughter. So she was with me all the time. And I think I may have shared this, but one day, this was what I was going to do forever. I loved it. I'm like, I'm going to keep growing. It provided very nicely. I had the freedom to be with my child. I could eventually step away and it continue producing on its own. I was like, great. And at some point, I started waking up going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get up today. I don't want to go to work today. And I'm like, that's weird. Well, we did talk about this, Amanda, because you and I, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so I was already divorced at that point. I seriously, as a single mother, although her dad's present, as a single mother, now I'm the sole provider in my home. And all I could think was, be done. You're done. This is not for you anymore. But I had nothing else coming up. I was like, this is insane. Long story short, I sat on it because I'm impulsive. And that was in January. And by June, I think it was June 16th, it was my official last day. I was completely done. I still had no idea what I was going to do, but I was like, I have enough money in the bank to not work for at least a year, to be comfortable, to travel with my daughter, to do what I want until I figure it out. Talk about taking leap of faith, because now if I were to go through that now, I'd be like, I don't know if I could do it, but it just felt right in that moment. And so I had just started working with soul contracts. I had, let me backtrack. I think it was December or January of that year. I had seen a podcast and they started talking about soul contracts. They put up the charts on the screen and they started breaking it down. And I remember being like, I need to know everything about these numbers. Like, it was a no-brainer. And so the podcast was on. That evening, I booked a reading, but she was booked out like a few weeks in advance. I think like 3 weeks like 3 weeks out. And then so I was like, I can't wait 3 weeks. So I ordered the book. Okay, the book comes. I started going through it, and I was like, I'll just wait for the reading. By the time the reading came, I was like, let me just look online and see where I can learn this stuff. Now, I'll tell you this. I've never been drawn to invest my money in some kind of spiritual stuff ever. Even though I was a spiritual woman, I never did. And so next thing I know, before I get my reading, I'd already booked the training. And by the time I had my reading, I already understood a good portion of the information. But I was like, well, at least I get to see how she does it and kind of like get in the flow of it, right? So that was March, I think, was that training. That's where I met you, Lauren, and Rachel.
Yeah,
no, I don't think it was May.
It was end of April, I think. It was 2 weekends, so end of April, early May.
Oh,
anyway, it's like,
yeah.
So I legit,
it doesn't really matter. But
but the point is, and I legit left my business with zero anything that closely to just discovering soul contracts. Okay. So I do the training.
I love this.
It takes me a minute for information to register. Like, I can read something and I can learn something, but sometimes I will have to reread it like 5 times for it to really sink in. So then I remember I did all 3 trainings, because there's 3 levels back to back. And by the time I did level 2 training, level 1 had finally sunk in. And then when I started level 3 training, level 2 had finally sunk in. And then it took me to like the end of the year for the whole picture to kind of start coming together. And I remember being like, I could totally do this. I could totally teach or do reading, not teach. We're not there yet, but I could totally give these readings and that be the space that I land in, because I knew when I got out of my business, I said, this will be the last 3D type of job that I have, I had no gifts that were showing up for me. I had no idea what it was going to look like, but I knew whatever direction I was going, it was very spiritually based. And then soul contracts fell into my lap. And we know soul contracts is really just the spiritual numerology of Moses, right? It's this whole Hebrew. I mean, everything is based on the Hebrew alphabet and all this information. So I remember going through the trainings going, well, there's got to be so much more, right? So I continued that. But as I started offering readings, I remember being like, how can I put myself out there? I was so nervous. It was like this whole thing, because now you're jumping into this whole thing. Somebody's paying you for this work. So there's this expectation, right? I'm going to pay for a service. You're going to give me what I've paid for. And I remember being like, God, I can't wait till the day where I just pull up a screen or I pull up a chart, and just based on the numbers and the symbols I see, I know what is happening. And now, like I recently had that moment, maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, where I was like, oh, I'm in that moment. Yeah. Now instantly like pick up the information.
Yeah.
And so through that, then of course, because Rachel was doing it, I also signed up for a healing course. And that's where we met Amanda. And of course, someone else where we're like, obviously, like, Amanda has to be a part of our life somehow. But so long story short, through doing these courses, it kind of set me up to where I am now, right? Which is doing the soul contract work, which is so much more than just soul contracts, right? It's the work is constantly evolving. There's healing that's thrown in there. And now I have found myself in a space where now I'm doing these healing sessions and I'm visually seeing things. I know I haven't shared this with anybody, but I'm visually seeing things and I'm getting these feelings, these sensations, these, what do you want to call it? These knowings that are coming in that are way outside of the healing space as we know it. And I'm just like, oh, okay.
It's very satisfying for Amanda. She's smug as now.
Yeah, it's funny because, and maybe other people experience this too, but for me, I'm always in awe of other people. I don't view myself and I'm not in awe of myself. And I love myself and I'm confident in who I am. But it's almost like I don't like the gift that I have or the gifts that I have and the access I have. It's almost like I don't realize their value or really give myself the credit or something. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It's something that I always speak to people about. I always tell people about. People just don't. So sometimes you just got to look in the mirror and just give yourself a nice pat on the back and you just say, good job. I come out of sessions and I tell myself, wow, good job. I could be heading upstairs to the loo, in between sessions. And I think, wow, good job. That was a great session. Obviously it's a shared good job, but because we're working together whenever we do a session. But I take it. Yeah. I own it. I give myself a good pat on the back. I give myself a good pat on the back because I've cooked something nice. I say, I did a good job that.
You know what's really interesting about that? So I have a really tough time I don't want to say receiving, because universe, I will receive all the abundance and good stuff you want to give me. But I've had a really tough time my whole life accepting compliments or gifts or that kind of thing. And so when I've done a numerology reading or a healing session and the person goes, you blew my mind. There's this part of me that kind of like, I go inward and I'm like, oh my God, please stop. I can't. And I have learned recently, instead of saying, no, I am now able to sit in the space where I go, thank you, and just receive, right? Because it's like you're saying, it's that pat in the back. Allow yourself to see the result of what you've provided.
It is. And because 100%, because when that person says that to you, you just blew my mind. you've already had confirmation within that session that things that you have spoken to them about. So for me, like I said before, I think last week, I'm always in that place of awe, like when it comes up. But it's like when they say, and they say, yeah, and I say, yeah, wow. I say, it works. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but it is because you're in that place. So you know when you've made a difference. You can feel that, and you share that, and you're in that moment. I think it's great. Having said that, a lot of that I learned from my husband, though, because he's always very good, not just at himself, but he's always very good from since the early days, the beginning. He'll always tell you, he was always doing that. He was always very appreciative of anything that you did or everything, even when we were cooked a meal, he would say, right, every meal we had, marks out of 10. That's where we would go, and we'd give it, stuff like that. But everything. And so I learned to appreciate myself, and I learned to appreciate what I do. And I think that by learning to appreciate what I do and appreciating myself, I think it allows me to give the very best.
Yeah. It's funny because when you're in a session where that person has resistance, they're not sure if they should allow you in or really open up or share. And then all of a sudden there's that moment in the session where you're like, oh, they dropped their guard, and that energy completely opens up. It is like that is rewarding. Right? Because you're like, okay, they trust me. They feel safe in the space. It resonates. Like they're ready to really allow the healing, allow the information to really sink in. And so that is like one of my favorite moments. So good.
Yiannah, I just wanted to say what you were speaking about before about now you're saying thank you, and that's been a conscious thing. And the more that you do it, the easier it becomes, and you sort of build that up. But also, for other people listening who may be, feeling that way, when you say thank you, it's almost like you're admitting to the truth of the magic of what you've just experienced, right? Yeah. And if you're not letting that in, then you're almost denying it for the other person.
That's it. That's what I was saying. Yes. Lauren said it.
So there's Lauren and her words again.
Again.
Love it.
Good on me.
I'm just going to whisper what I need to say to Lauren. And let her deliver.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, is there a saying where they say when you don't allow somebody to do for you, you're robbing them of that same joy you feel when you do for others.
Yeah. And it's just so beautiful when everyone's in that and witnessing that.
So can I jump in here and change the topic?
Oh,
yes.
So back to Rachel's gateway drug comment in the beginning. So knowing that your mum was spiritually minded and all of her beautiful life story and intertwined with yours, at what point were you like, there is more out there? I think I don't know if anyone else has had that moment where you can look back and go, that was my gateway. That was my gateway drug right there. Like, can you think of what your turning point was? Like the I don't know, was it a reading? Was it being around someone?
You know what? It doesn't make sense. And so for me, I guess the best way to explain it is I've always just had a knowing. I had never experienced it myself. Like, for example, my mom would see angels in the house. She'd wake up in the middle of the night and they'd be over her bed and her whole room would be lit up. And then my sister, when she was 25, which made me 22, she had a benign brain tumor that we didn't know what was happening. And she collapsed on the floor one day her and I, we shared a room. There was 5 kids. Okay. My grandma, okay. So her and I shared this room. And so she collapsed on the floor. And my sister is she believes in God, but she's a very non-believer of everything else. And what she shared was she was in so much pain. She collapsed on the floor. And she said, God, please take this pain away. And she said in that moment, she opened her eyes and she saw what to her was Jesus walking like kind of on her back. And when he crossed over her head, all the pain went away. And so they have all had these moments. I've never experienced that until when I was probably 30, 31-ish. I was in this seminar, and it's interesting because I guess I never put all this together. I was in this like better living seminar where they literally lock you into this hotel for 5 days, and they're breaking you down and they're rebuilding you up. I mean, the concept of it is really beautiful, but I remember this entire time being like, I should not be here. Like what people were sharing and going through and expressing was not aligned to where I was. And it just felt, I almost want to say dark. Like it felt really negative, really heavy. I don't think the space was actually well protected, to be honest, now that I reflect back. And so I'm sitting in the seminar and I connected with this one woman who was, her and I don't even know how we started talking about spirit, but it was very clear that she was connected. And on the last day, Amanda knows the story. On the last day, we were all like in the vestibule, and maybe there was like 20 or 30 people who were attending this program. And there was this one girl who always was around our group, but she didn't acknowledge me the entire time. Like it was very obvious to me, and I was already having this horrific time. And they had this rule that you're in this group of 5. And if a single person says, I'm out of here, the whole group has to go home, which I'm sure probably was probably bullshit.
It sounds really intense.
Well, the point is they want to make sure that you followed through and you didn't give up. Okay. So I was like, I have to follow through. And I was miserable the entire
That's crap. That's crap.
It is. Now, if it was my daughter, I'd be like, get out of there. I'm coming to pick you up. But so we're on the last day, and this girl comes up to me and she grabs me by my wrists, both wrists. And she goes, Yiannah, it was so nice to meet you. You're so lovely and you're so beautiful and you're so this and you're so that. And I'm thinking to myself as she's talking, you didn't speak one word to me. How could you have all these wonderful things to say to me when you went out of your way to avoid me in my group sessions? And so I did what I always do. And I say, thank you. It was so lovely to meet you too. She goes her own way. And within seconds, my wrists start hurting me. And I'm looking down and I had these huge gashes on my wrists. Skin was protruding. The skin was actually broken. And I was like, what is going on? And I'm looking around because I'm like, I wasn't near anything. I didn't hit anything. What happened? And so the one girl that I really connected with on the first session with her, she was actually staying with me before she went home the next day. She comes over and she's like, Yiannah, what's wrong? And I'm like, listen, I was talking to so-and-so. She came over, she grabbed my arm, she's paying me these compliments. She leaves, and now this is what I'm experiencing. And she goes, Yiannah, that girl used to cut herself. Okay. So what she did was, by grabbing onto me, she transferred that energy and I absorbed it. I consumed it, and it I was experiencing the same thing that she used to do. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, my friend says to me, don't you protect yourself? And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, don't you know how to energetically protect yourself? I said, no. Long story short, she gave me this beautiful little prayer, which I still say to this day. Anytime I'm sensing any negativity or something that I'm not comfortable with in the middle of a conversation with someone, in my mind, I'm bubbling myself, I'm saying my protection prayer, and I feel great. And ever since that, I had one other experience. And then when I started bubbling myself, it never happened again. And so that night, that girl stayed with me, and we were in my room and we were talking about something. And all of a sudden she says to me, Yiannah, do you know that your entire room is filled with spirit guides? They're all for you. And I was like, really? Like where and what and how, and tell me more. And she goes, they are here. No, she goes, before you incarnated, this is how tapped in she was. She goes, before you incarnated, you set this up to where they were here to make sure that they helped you accomplish whatever you wanted to accomplish. It wasn't like they were just here and then whenever you needed something, they'd help you, or like they would guide you. They're very, very active, and there's a lot of them. And so all of a sudden, as she's saying this to me, and she says to me, one of them is Blue Feather. We talked about, I think, on our first or second episode. Yeah. She's the one who told me his name. She says to me, just relax and feel them. And as we were at this point laying on my bed, all of a sudden, every cell in my body is lit up. And it's like this wave. It's almost like it's going up and down, up and down, up and down my body. And every hair, cell, inch, everything is like illuminated. And she says to me, ask them some questions. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to ask? I don't even remember the questions, but I remember every time the answer was a yes, all those goosebumps, all that energy would go wild in my body. And when the answer was a no, it would just be quietly just waiting for a different question. And I felt that entire energy for a good like 24 hours. Like I went to bed and I woke up and it was still there. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. The connection was so strong. And it was that moment where I was like, not only is there so much more, but there's so much more that I could tap into. And so that was like a huge, I learned how to protect myself. I learned that I needed protection. I feel like most people don't even know that that is something that you need to do. Is that called spiritual hygiene? Is that part of it? Like, would we qualify under that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, totally. And so that was for me that first time. And then I think like most people in 2020, being able to have time to be at home and do nothing, and you're researching and reading and you're interacting. I had this one friend at that time, and her and I were diving deep into so many things. I think then it just kept exploding. And now I'm very much at the point where it's like, even the information I have, the things that I know now, I'm still very aware that it's limited, and it frustrates me. And that's why I always say, but why? I don't get it. What's the point? I know there's more. And so I know that there is going to be that point where that next step of information or growth comes in. And I'm like, I can't wait, because now I'm consciously aware that that's going to happen. And I know consciously that's why I keep questioning everything, because we know, and we know, us ladies, with what we've gone through and experienced together, that there's so much more than we have been told or that we know. Yeah. And it's not only more than
what we remember.
And it's way different than what we've even been told. Yeah. Because as that Amanda memory comes in, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You have.
It feels familiar in the body though. But that was a great question though. Who else has got gateway? What was your gateway drug?
Oh,
I think I took every drug. I don't know. I don't know what led me here.
That's going into the Amanda reel. Just saying.
You were born into a spiritual crack den, Amanda.
Oh my God.
You were balls deep in the trade from the beginning.
I think I was trying everything. I think I was trying everything.
You know, I'm sorry to be pedantic. Just the story that you just said about that course. How old were you then? I'm just trying to put it in chronological order.
Probably like actually it was before my 30th birthday, so maybe like 29 years old, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I will say that there was like 4 or 5 levels to this course, and that first one is all love and light and positivity, and you're like, oh my God, this is the best weekend spent. And then of course there's level 2, which is like more like, you get into, listen, people go through some really heavy stuff, and this is a way to really help people break through that and heal it and really come out the other side. And there is really a lot of beauty and a lot of great things that they did in there that I think have amazing value for me.
But can I ask something? Right. So at what level were they saying that if one goes home, the whole group goes home?
Level
Level
2.
2. Then
Which
I
was
don't care. I don't care how much sugar, how much icing, how much ice cream, lollipop, whatever else they stick on top of that.
That's bullshit, she says.
Okay. That was,
But hold on,
yeah.
like, Amanda, if I were to do that now, if I were to
Mm.
experience that now, I'd be like, yeah, no thanks.
You'd walk out.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I was way more of a bigger people pleaser. And I was like, well, I don't want to ruin everyone else's experience.
Yeah.
And also you learned
so
so much out of it. So you were there for
Exactly.
quote unquote a reason. But
right,
yeah.
reason. But look what it locks you in there with is guilt.
Mm. Mhm.
That's what it locks you in there with is guilt and creates. So even
Guilt,
if you're
shame, obligation.
exactly.
All
Do you
of
know what I
that.
mean?
Name
That
it.
I'm going to ruin it for
But-
everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for you. You've come here for all your different reasons. So for me, whoever could have created that space,
Yeah.
yeah.
Feels really
Well
bad.
done.
It felt really bad when you said it. Like it felt really
Right.
bad in my body, right? Yeah.
It was rough.
Kylie?
We've all done questionable things to get to where we are today.
Look,
Have
I
we?
did a
Be honest.
I did a
I know
whole range
Rachel
of
has.
courses
Kylie,
when I was
elaborate.
26. And
Did
there
I
was
what?
there was rules like that too. Like we
Mm.
had like I do these courses, landmark education, which just by the way, everybody will say it's a cult and all that kind of stuff. And they had icky like you could leave anytime up on the first day and just get your money back, or maybe halfway through the first day. But then after that, you were absolutely locked in with all of that stuff. But Amanda, honestly, at the time, and I know that that's not how you teach and how you want to lead, but truly, if I didn't do landmark education, I don't know what would have caused me to take personal responsibility, because I was just out of control 26-year-old, and I was a shamer and a blamer. Do you know what I mean? So really, it was an awful experience for me, but I am so grateful for it. But I think that if I told you things about the course, you would have a lot to say about it too. You know,
I suppose that's because I've been through a lot of different trainings in my life, a lot of different spaces and places, a lot of different teachers. I've seen stuff, and so you know what I mean. So I just think that I'm very much about the way how I see people try and candy coat things, which has a real sort of like dark energy. I don't care. For me, I just think, so I suppose I said to you, I don't know where this person's come from, because I wasn't, I keep saying I don't care, because I think that if you know that you've got something that's really good, and that then people will come and everybody has their own journey, and sometimes people can't do the whole journey. And that is exactly where they need to go, and that's exactly what they need to do. And sometimes people will come and they will do the whole journey and they get absolutely jack and nori from it, because there's absolutely no change. I don't think that there's things that you can lock people in with. I understand whereby you can say, well, listen, if you go halfway through this training and you decide to leave, you're not getting your money back, because, well, I've already spent that. I'm already in Dubai with that. Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying,
But imagine being in the energy of a place that is like that, where you've got people who don't want to be there.
I want to be there.
I don't know about you, but I don't want to be around anyone that doesn't want to be around.
And you're looking at your group. You're looking at that group, thinking, fudge sake, if I was listen anywhere else.
Let me add something more to that. I knew 2 people who were also in that session. One of them was my mother, and one of them was this girl that I worked with. By the time we had gotten to the actual weekend, those 5 days, the girl I was working with, she completely tried to shit on me at work. And it was one of those, like, when you break my trust, it's really hard for me to recover. And she was actively coming after me. I don't know why. It's not like something happened. Her and I, we had traveled the world together. We hung out together all the time. Like, what's the problem? And so now I have to spend 5 days in this locked program. Can't leave the hotel. And she's also there, but at least not in my group. And then they go, okay, you can't pick. No. They said, now you need people to choose on who's you're gonna share a room with. It can't be anybody that you know. Oh yeah, you had to share a room with, was it one or two other people? I can't remember. And I remember being like, oh my God, I don't mind sharing a room if that's what I have to do, but I could feel the energy from all the girls my age. They were not vibing with me. Nobody wanted to be in that space. And I thought to myself, from day one, the first half a day, what the fuck am I doing here? And so it was one of those where I was like miserable from the start. The entire energy was wrong. And now I have to share that space with the one girl who I personally know, who's personally attacking me. And I have to sit there as if that doesn't exist. So it was one of those where I'm like, I was at the wrong. I know we are taught to believe that you're always at the right place at the right time, that everything that happens is meant to happen. I don't believe that I was meant to be there. I don't believe that was my space, and I don't think I should have been in there, because I can get along with anybody, but that entire energy, the men, I had no problem with. The women, for whatever reason, aside from my mother, who I wasn't allowed to share a group with or a room with, I couldn't. There was nothing. And I was just like, I should not be here. I legit should not be here. The only thing I learned was that I'm transferring energy onto my wrist and protect myself. But I wish I could have done that somewhere else for fucking free.
Yeah. But so my question is, though, that the girl that you met that got you to feel all the guides that were in the room with you, do you not feel that was like a benefit of being there? And perhaps
I met her in level 1.
Uh-huh.
Which is why I allowed her to stay with me that night, because then she was driving back to Ohio, right? I don't just allow random people to stay in my home, okay?
No.
But I understand what you're saying. But to me, it felt like the negative totally outweighed the positive. And so for me, it's like, maybe that's just for me to have better discernment on where and I should participate.
I do find it interesting, though, because like you clearly learned a lot from being in that energy. And like as soon as you feel that signature again, you be out of there.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, the energy just doesn't feel great. I don't love that you were there. I wouldn't want to be there either, but I feel like you would know it and, before even signing up next time. You know what I mean?
Maybe it was just a big lesson in boundaries. You're going to stand up for yourself. You're going to speak up for yourself, or what?
It was 100% about that. But let me ask you something, right? Although I know we're giving this training a big slap on the bum, right? But anyway, right? But
you are, just for the record, I'm not. I'm like, welcome to 3D world, ladies. That course that you did sounds like the last 20 years in my industry. I'm like, that was good training. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, right? Did they stipulate that in all the verbiage that once you sign up and you join, you're not allowed to leave? Otherwise, the whole group goes home. No, they didn't state that.
They don't tell you any of that because nobody would agree to those terms.
Well, of course, but so why would nobody agree to those terms? The fact that nobody would agree to those terms means that they were doing something that was
shifty.
Was shifty, absolute crap. Do you know what I mean? And I understand that sometimes people can find it hard to face their shadows or to face their darkness. And so, they want to leave. People want to, they want to get out before they even do the work. I understand that. But that's the person's choice. What you've done in that moment, that whoever was running that course, you took away somebody's choice. You took away somebody's ability to say, I can do this or I can't do this. Or I'm not going to do this now, or I don't feel safe enough to do this. Yeah. And
they make them feel like a naughty child. Like you have to say, otherwise the whole class gets punished. I mean, what is
whole
that?
Class gets punished.
Not only that, your group leader.
Very similar to working in corporate world, people. I don't mean to be a shit about it.
Yeah, but you're
honestly, like, this is all beautiful.
Paycheck there. You're getting a paycheck there.
I know, but people are going to the
Yeah.
courses for reasons. Do you know what I mean? And honestly, the difficulties that they have in dealing with people in difficult situations that they didn't know were coming and they really don't prefer is exactly the environment that they need to have this shit come up and to have it in a controlled environment. They're not at home with their families. They're not going to thrash their children because they're feeling guilty and shameful. They're stuck with strangers that they think are dickheads. So be it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's how.
Because that happens in the corporate world doesn't make it right.
I'm not saying that's right.
That's
what I mean.
That happens. That's
where most people live. Is in that kind of world.
Is it at different levels of consciousness? You know,
I'm all about changing
scenario.
Yeah, I'm all about changing that.
I couldn't tolerate it now, and I'd leave.
No,
but as a 26-year-old, I promise you.
Yeah. So I think Rachel's point is,
I needed. Yeah.
For some people at some points in their lives, they need that kind of thing because it matches whatever they're resonating at. Okay, we're all sitting here kind of, you know, partially I'm horrified because it just does not vibe with me at all, right? But you know,
I've heard everything else. I really have, but that is just like just like stuff I made. Those are the kind of things that I think for me is what we're trying to shift or like
moving out of.
Or like change in the world. Do you know what I mean? And like I said before, I've done a lot of training throughout my life. I've done a lot of stuff. I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
You know,
but
I've
also
experienced everything else. I've experienced like, you know, all the other kinds of stuff that, you know, you see all the head honchos are trying to get it on with the participants and all that kind of nonsense. Right?
But so the motivation, but hold on, before we get into that, the motivation over there is fear, right? And where Amanda, you know, we know you come from a place of love, as I feel, you know, we all do, is as much as some of us might go, no, I don't have a heart, but
then
but you know, that is really a fear motivation, and really what we are shifting into collectively is heart-based, you know, which is love. So it's just showing the two sides.
Okay, so I want to.
So can I just throw this in? Right, just can I just throw this in because it's been that. Do we not realize that as teachers and as practitioners, that we have to be really mindful of what we do and how we do our do? Because you may have created a teaching scenario or some kind of program that you're teaching people. But if you, in and of yourself, as the person who has created it, is creating trauma in it, again, in another way, that is going to take that person into another training somewhere else to clear the trauma of that. We have to be really mindful of that. We have to be responsible for the energy that we bring. We have to be responsible for what we're putting out there. We have to be responsible for what we're creating, whether it's old, whether it's new. I don't give a toenail. What I do care about is the fact that
we're keeping all the toenails. There are no giving away toenails.
Please, do you know what I mean? But we have to be responsible about that, which is why sometimes I have even said in some trainings that I've said, no, you can't say that, because if you do say that, it means that person's going to have to go away and do clearing on the trauma that you've just created. It's not what they came into the training for.
That is
do you know
true.
what I mean? So so things like that for me, and then what it can happen is that I just can't fathom it. And I understand I just can't fathom it, because it means then that people can be there, like you said, that don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Which then means that they can't actually take on the rest of that training. They can't actually benefit from the rest of anything.
Yeah.
Because they're shut down. So in what world do you think that's okay?
Yeah. And not only that, I think there's two different kinds of people in the world. Some people that require tough love, or they're really harsh shake to really step into their power, their healing, their whatever. And then there are people who need that gentle love approach. And so that level 1 of that course was all loving. It was nothing but love. That's who I am. If you come at me hard,
I know it seems a bit deceptive, right?
Right.
It seems a bit.
That's what
100%.
pulls you in.
And so I guess like, okay, so for all 5 of us, which one of you prefer the tough love? Kylie's gonna raise her hand. Which one of you prefer the tough
Keeping it
love
down.
over the love, gentle love, like in that, you understand what I'm saying? The two
Lauren.
different spaces.
Yeah, I'm the gentle, but I can be, you know, I can be
Can be
tough.
tough too.
No,
Mhm.
not can you be tough. Of course you can be tough, but when you're receiving it,
Mm.
do
Definitely
you,
combo.
you're
I'm
see,
50-50.
tough love for me shuts me down. We get
Okay.
Well, shut me down. My mum said I never even used to like. I never used to like getting clapped. I mean, getting clapped.
Does clap literally mean like this, or is clap like this?
I'm confused.
Okay,
Oh,
clapped.
okay.
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 Here's a tip from the
gotcha.
top. I don't think any children like getting clapped. But
Nobody
anyway,
likes getting
I
clapped,
think-
but
No.
I never liked getting shouted at. So I never really liked to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I didn't like it. I didn't want it, and that was me. Having said that, my siblings, boy, they seemed like they were up for that every day. They were doing like a madness. Do you know what I mean? but I just don't think, for me, I guess in my adult life, or I guess for anybody that I'm around, where, okay, put it to you like this. If there's going to be tough love, then I've made a decision to sign up for that. I've signed up for what they call sort of a boot camp.
Yeah,
I know I'm going to boot camp.
Yeah.
Did they put boot camp in front of the title of the course?
No.
Then you know what? I've been tricked.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the first one was so loving, and then the advertisement for the second one didn't say you're going to be locked in whether you like it or not.
But you know what?
It's
You know what the biggest bullshit is? In order for you to participate in these programs, you have to be referred by somebody who already did the program. And part of the rule is they can't they can't tell you anything that's going to happen. And I remember
I get a commission?
A day and a half in, when I was able to go back to my room and get on my phone, I called my friend and I said, "How dare you allow me to be?"
This is a cult.
Yeah.
This is not a learning program.
And what did
this is?
say?
It's not an episode on Yiannah. That's what this episode is.
Oh,
no
no.
longer.
Well,
I'm like,
no.
we can't even bring this back.
We're going to wrap it up anyway.
We're gonna- yeah,
We've got to get
It was the
Kylie to do
gateway.
the
It was-
cards.
It was
Get
gateway.
Kylie to do the cards, and this is officially Yiannah episode 1.
Do
And
we
honestly,
give
Yeah, no.
Amanda a little
Okay.
time here? Because
I don't even think we can even.
What?
But no.
Amanda,
We need to give
Amanda's
Amanda
really not.
like the stage for a minute, just in case.
Just
Like,
to get
are you
it
going to be
out.
okay? I'm just concerned for Amanda right now.
I love it. I just love it how Amanda's just protective of all students. Of
Amanda's
all
like,
kinds,
I want names.
everywhere.
Amanda is protective of all beings.
Yeah,
everywhere.
You know what? That's how, you know what?
Outrage.
That's how I feel. Just like
Me
what
too.
Kylie said, is I feel like I want names. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Same. And then
She's going to turn them into spiders
I'll go
and then
back
hoover
in
them.
time. I'll go forward. I'll do whatever.
then-
I'll go to the
then
point.
they send you these emails. Come volunteer in these levels.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Stop it. Okay.
oh,
Stop.
Amanda, go
Stop.
back.
Yiannah,
Stop.
start feeding her.
You gotta stop.
Infiltrate
Okay.
from the inside.
Yeah.
I'm going to like shift the direction here. Back to Yiannah. So, Yiannah, like one thing you said earlier was like you have people going, how is she going to do this? How is she going to pull that off? And I totally have had that moment with you of like, what? She thinks she's going to do that? And then she's like, and then she fucking did it. And then I was like, so that was obviously my shit, right? Which is fine. We've all got shit. But now it's like Yiannah says she's going to do this. Fuck yeah, she's going to do that. Like she's like
You
she's
learn
going to
pretty
do.
quickly that
Yeah.
whatever
I know,
she
like
puts her
within
mind to, like
5
I'm just going to
milliseconds.
schedule this.
What
because
she does,
it's a
what she
thought
says
right
is what
now,
she does.
But it's
Yeah.
going to
Whatever she
happen.
says is going to happen, and it's
Yeah.
now in my diary for whenever. Like
Exactly.
so it's like I'm a believer.
Yeah. It's like Greece 2026. I already know
Exactly.
No, it's going to be 25 knowing Yiannah. She's going to pull the
Oh, is it?
timelines forward and make it happen.
that. Make it
Hey, I'm
happen.
happy for that. I'm happy for that.
Well, listen.
So
not
it's
to
a thing.
Thank you. I accept that. I honor that. And I
Look
thank
at
you. And I do have a few things to talk about timelines, but that is for, I'm going to pin it in.
Episode 2.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there, but yes. Listen, thank you for allowing me to share.
Oh, it's beautiful, Yiannah.
Darling.
Yeah,
A little
thank
bit
you.
We could have heard
Beautiful.
so much
And what
more.
makes me me and all that stuff. And everybody knows I can sit here and I could talk all day long, and then it's you run around. Okay.
Yeah.
So
No, we could have heard so much more, but it was Rachel that took us to rehab.
Sorry.
And it's Kylie that asked again about rehab, and that's what happened.
Anyway,
another place.
50-50, Rachel. I'll own that 50%. Okay.
I'm okay with it.
No, but
Okay,
beautiful.
Kylie,
but
what you
beautiful.
got for
But
us?
can I just say, just before Kylie says it, I
sorry.
just want to say about Yiannah. Yiannah, I just think your energy is just magical. I love the fact that you have the ability to hear the assignment and to execute the assignment. You hear spirit. Do you know what I mean? And you just follow through. And that's what it is. That's why you do what you do. It's not even bravery, it's fearlessness. You know what I mean? And I just love it. And so if you said, come, we're going down this dark road, down this alleyway, or whatever it is, or down this lane, whatever it is, we're coming. Yeah, we could totally do this. I'll say, okay, let's go.
Yeah, she would send you a Google invite to join her down the alley at a time.
Yeah, to make sure that the time zones work out.
Yeah, you understand? So we've got to be there.
We got to go.
It's like
It's in the
Avengers
calendar.
Assemble, and we're there. Do you know what I mean? Right. So I love it.
Thank you
for being you.
Love you.
Thank you. I love you guys. I love you guys.
We love you too.
Kylie, what you got for us, girlfriend?
Yeah.
Okay. We're doing some tarot today. This is Tarot of the Divine. I don't know. Read it.
I like
Too many words. Too many words. Okay,
Some love. Read yourself.
Oh my goodness, I've gone blurry. Too much excitement. Okay, so I've pulled the World and the Moon. Now, the interesting thing about tarot is that these are major arcana, so these are very destiny cards versus the others. We don't care. So the Moon, okay, so this is the energy of the week, okay? So the Moon is about like deception in a way, like in regards to this energy, right? Because I didn't read the book. I'm just pulling shit out of my whatevers, right? Billy Bob balls. Moon is around deception, and it's important that you're looking at the true moon. That's the image I'm getting. I'm getting two moons in my mind, right? So there's a false one and there's a true moon, right? So make sure that whatever you're working towards is the true moon, not the fake reflection, okay? And then the world is, of course, thank you.
Not ego.
And then the world is around abundance, around it coming true and coming to realization. Just make sure you're focused on the true and not the reflection.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you.
You guys, thank you for today. This has been awesome. Can you tell I'm not shy to talk? And
we didn't have to do anything.
When Yiannah says she could talk all day, like it's true. Like it's literally like, have you got 8 hours?
And we could listen all day.
listen,
This is true. I love you.
Tell you how many times Amanda and I were supposed to have a session.
God, session.
3 hours later, we're like, we're out of time. We don't have time to do the session. We have to reschedule.
And then Yiannah goes, we can't do the session. No, we can't do the session. And that's the schedule. And then we'll say, we'll start the session and I don't want to speak to you. I don't want to speak to you. I'm not going to speak to you.
Totally. So funny. Amazing. Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This concludes our episode. If you're interested in booking a reading, a healing, a guided meditation session, a light body activation, or simply want to say hello, head on over to yoursoulwisdomshow.com. We thank you for allowing us to create this beautiful space, and we hope you have a beautiful, blessed day. Bye, everybody.
Bye. See you guys.